Welcome to day one of the Ready for Anything Speaking Challenge. All right, so this is going to be quite an interesting one, and I'm excited to be sharing with you today. So if you're here, I want you to welcome to day one of the Ready for Anything Speaking Challenge. All right, so this is going to be quite an interesting one, and I'm excited to. Okay, so I hope that in doing this, you all can still hear on YouTube. I really hope so, because I suspect that you'll be able to unmute. I'm about to find out. Okay. So I think what I will do, just so that we don't have too much clumsiness, is I'm going to. Okay, good. All right, so you're welcome. I decided to share day one, and the reason is I think that this is going to be quite an interesting one for you. And in day one, I think that most people are going to benefit from what is shared. So please, I encourage you as you listen to not just listen, but take notes, also to like, share, and subscribe. All right, so welcome. Okay, so I'm going to quickly share my screen as we talk today about something that I think is so important to most of us, okay? We're going to be talking about the matter of impromptu speaking. And what is impromptu speaking? First of all, understand that public speaking of any sort is sometimes a very scary experience for many. And life does not give you a script. So very often you have a prepared situation where you're preempted and you're expecting to tell someone something or to respond to a question or to give an argument, to respond to a debate, etc. Or maybe even just to answer an interview question. Those are prepared in many cases, right? In the sense that you anticipate it, you know it's coming. But what happens when you don't know it's coming? Or maybe you're even blindsided in what is supposed to be predictable by an unpredictable or unpredicted question. So those kinds of scenarios lead to the need to understand how to prepare for impromptu speaking. There is power in impromptu speaking that we're going to unlock in the course of this course. Now, I want you to know that this is a 3-day course, but it contains a lot of information to help you. Today, we're focusing on the mindset, because understand that your mind is where it all begins, right? As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Now, here we have on the screen 5 different areas of our lives that are unique to each one of us. I got this from, I'm not even pretending that this is mine, okay? I got this from Salem King, who is an amazing influencer on Instagram, and I had the privilege of attending one of his trainings. I realized that this is true, and I kind of, well, called this from his presentation, okay, that there are 5 areas of our lives where there are differences, where there's uniqueness, because you have your own education, and that education is not just talking about your degrees, it's talking about everything you've learned through the years, okay? Life has educated you in different ways. So whether it is shopping, learning to sell in your father's shop, your parents' spare parts business, learning to understand how a surgeon treats his clients, his patients, or how tired a lecturer can get after marking a heap of scripts. Life has educated you in certain ways. There's also the experiences that you've had. So you've had certain experiences that are unique to you, not even only in themselves, but in the way you have perceived them, in the way you have, the things you have imbibed from those experiences, the ways that they have shaped you. Then there is your expertise, of course, how you have been trained, what you've been trained for, what you're really good at. And that's not only a function of what you've been taught, but also of what you have learned. In other words, not only what you have been, what has been administered to you, but also how you have received it. Again, a function of your uniqueness. We also have your interests, which are varied. So one person has interests that are strictly scientific, another person has a variety that mixes science and art, another person is pure art and has nothing to do with science. Somebody is a fantastic mathematician, another person cannot stand to add two numbers together. Okay, so those differences, those interests, the one person loves comedy and finds it very refreshing, another person finds it very irritating and ridiculous because, hello, life is too serious to be fooling around. Okay, but you just find that the variation of interests means that there is a unique mix that is you. There's also your exposure. What have you been exposed to? What kinds of people have you connected with through the years? What kinds of travel have you done? What kinds of books have you read? What kinds of people have you met? Who are the influences in your life? And you just find that all of those things come together to give you a unique blend. I say this because, and I start here because the truth is, many of us are afraid of impromptu speaking because we just see ourselves as being blindsided, as being incapable of handling the situation. But if you can see how much you have in your arsenal already, just by looking at this slide, then wow, you're amazing, all right? And that's something I wanted to share with you. Consider this quote. It says, the person who does not speak is not more powerful than the person who cannot speak. And of course, it's a paraphrase of another similar quote. But I find this very true because I would tell you a story. So I was about, I want to say 13, 14, I think I'm right, possibly older. I'm not sure. Somewhere in my teenage, and I would say between 13 and 16, definitely. I was I had an experience that really impacted me significantly in hindsight. It was a Bible study experience, and we were all supposed to, it was a Bible study quiz, right? So we're supposed to read a book that I'm not particularly excited about, the book of Jeremiah. There are books in the Bible that fascinate me and excite me, and there's some that don't, or that do so less. Okay, so I wasn't particularly thrilled, but there was supposed to be a prize to be won. And at the time, I really liked the idea of winning. So I studied and I read the book from start to finish, all the chapters of Jeremiah in a short period of time. So you're cramming in a lot of knowledge and information, not really for the transformation that the word can give, not because I was trying to be inspired, but because I wanted to win this contest, period. So I study, I read, and then I get to this point when it's the quiz and we are having the exchange. You know how it is. They would introduce the different contestants. I think, if I remember correctly, we were like 3 or 4 representing our own church, and there was another church, and these other guys were representing them. And the questions started coming. So you know how these things go. If you pass up your opportunity, the other person gets the opportunity to try at your question, and then they get maybe half the score, etc. So here we were going head to head, back to back, head to head, question after question, until boom, we had this last question. And this question was supposed to be like a tiebreaker and was the deciding factor. This is, if you guys get it, you will win. And if you miss it, you will lose. And what was the question? I'll never forget, because when these kinds of things happen, you never forget, right? So it was, what was the name of Jeremiah's scribe? Now, I have no problem remembering that question, even though so many years have passed, because of how much it impacted me. And so I thought to myself, and only one word was on my mind. Now, I want to use this as a point to illustrate to a lot of people who write exams, prepare for exams, and you find yourself, you're studying, right? And you read this page. and you flip to the next page and you ask yourself a question or two about what you read in the previous page, and you feel like nothing is coming, so you go back to the previous page, and sometimes you're there for hours just dancing around in this cycle because what if I don't get it? It's not sticking. I don't think I know it. And we don't trust ourselves that, hey, I read this stuff. It will come to me when I need it. And for many people, that's a big challenge, right? And that was the challenge in this moment because only one word came to my mind. There was no conflict. I had only one word. And here's the thing, if I said the word and I was wrong, we still had a time frame. So someone else could have said something else and maybe we would have won. But if I was right, then we will win. So this was a high stakes moment. High stakes. It was win or lose. And nobody else on my team was saying anything. And this one word was on my mind, just right there on the tip of my tongue. And the seconds were counting. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Oh God, should I just say it? 5, 4, 3, 2. And I did not say it. And the pain of hearing someone from the other side say the exact word that was dancing around in my head, the name Baruch. Baruch was the scribe of Jeremiah. I knew the name Baruch, and I did not say it in that moment. And that was a life-transforming moment for me because it illustrates this point, right? The quote, the person who does not speak is not more powerful than the person who cannot speak. In that moment, if I had been deaf and dumb, if I had been held down and being stifled, if I was asleep, if I was unconscious, in that moment, I was not using the power that I had any more than someone in those other situations I've described. So that is significant. And that taught me a very tough lesson. What's the worst that can happen? Okay, what's the worst that can happen? Now, here on the screen are some real life situations that happen to people. They happen. This is what happens when you don't take those opportunities to speak up on the spot when you need to. Sometimes you run into somebody in the elevator or at an event, or someone introduces you, and in that little moment, you have the opportunity to say something of interest, something that says, hey, this is me, something that helps you to stand out. Or maybe you just had the opportunity to shine and to give a solution to a problem while you're listening in a board meeting or in an office meeting. And because you don't say it, because you don't speak up, you watch the opportunity pass you by. So you have awkward silences during introductions where someone tells you to say hi, or they say hi to you and they say something nice and you're stuck because you're frozen like, oh my God, this is this person. They're so big and important. And if I don't say anything, it'll be a problem, but I don't know what to say. And you're all up in your head and you miss the opportunity. Okay, there's also making a poor impression at meetings. Okay, I mentioned this in the video I did yesterday, if you watched it. And again, it's so important that it's worth mentioning again. It's because many times you know stuff, you have ideas, something is being discussed, a solution comes to you. And it comes to you because out of what we discussed before, right? You have all this mix of your exposure, your expertise, your experience, your interests, your experiences. And there's much more than that. Those 5 are just a few of the things that make you unique. There's your potential, your values, your talents. There's so much. that makes you different from someone else. And there's an opportunity to solve a problem, but there is you up in your head, afraid, worried. Oh my goodness, what if I say it and they don't accept it? But what if they do? And sometimes they won't accept it in that moment, but down the line, you would have people say, have you ever heard people say, it's true, and this person said this thing. And then you now get the credit for something that you mentioned much earlier, but only because you mentioned it. Because had you not mentioned it, someone else would have. Or you mumble it and someone sitting beside you amplifies it, which happens all the time to a lot of introverts. And that person who amplifies it gets the credit and you get nothing. What about the lost sales? The things that you don't get because you did not speak up. There's so many situations like that, okay? And this is important that we understand what impromptu speaking is, and we help ourselves to embrace it, not as someone hijacking the moment or someone embarrassing us, but as an opportunity to engage our brains, to speak, to connect, to make a difference, okay? And for many of us, because we're afraid of being exposed, we are not confident of who we are or what we have to offer. So we feel like those moments expose us, those moments embarrass us. Someone is out to get us. And that's why they're asking us something in public, on the spot, without prior notice, because we must always have prior information, be given the script, so we walk in and we shine. But what impromptu speaking opportunities do is they help you to question the narrative. Am I really as knowledgeable as I think? Do I need to work more on this? If you don't have those opportunities, you'll keep thinking you're all that. And maybe you're not. That's one of the benefits, right? So responding to situations, real life, real time, really helps with your confidence. It helps with you understanding who you are and seeing the value of who you are and what you carry. It helps with showing yourself and anyone who's listening that you are credible, that you have value. And those are some of the many benefits that you get from being able to speak impromptu. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide because I intend to finish this in 30 minutes because this is just a taster of the course. All right. So there are some questions you need to ask yourself, and these are important. I'm going to highlight a few of them. The first one is who. Why is it important to think who? Here's the thing. When you don't have a script, when you don't have prior notice, and someone asks you a question, your brain kicks into action. But what is your brain saying? Many times you haven't processed it. And so if you start to talk immediately because you're trying to prove that you're not empty, you end up rambling and you end up coming across as someone who hasn't thought things through. So who is asking is an important thing to consider. Why? Because they're asking for a reason. I like the Bible a lot, and I think of people like Jesus. When Jesus would ask a question like, what do you want? Now, for context, you're asking a man who is blind, what do you want? This is a man who maybe is blind and has also been shouting, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Why would you ask, what do you want? Well, so if the person asking is some researcher on the street, how you answer would be different from if it was your neighbor or if your mother. You know how your mother can ask you, what do you want? And what she's really asking is, can you please cut to the chase and stop disturbing me? You've been bothering me all day. Okay, maybe she's irritated, she's not in a good mood. If Jesus is asking you, what do you want? It's a whole different situation. Okay, he's asking you not because he doesn't know, but because he wants you to acknowledge his lordship in that situation. Okay, so I digress. I was preaching, pardon me. But this is what happens when you don't pay attention to who is asking. So if someone like the president of your country is asking you a question about what the problems are in the country, you want to be cautious about who is asking, because what are the odds that you know better the problems of the country than the president does, right? Chances are he has access to a lot more information than you do. So he's probably just asking you, what do you think of my leadership? And that's a coded question, because in that scenario, you now have an opportunity to connect or to not connect. You have an opportunity to be a sycophant or to be honest and intelligent, to show yourself as someone who has value to offer to his government to make things a bit easier for him, or to etc. Do you get what I'm saying? Who is asking is a very important consideration when you're thinking of impromptu speaking. Who is asking? You also want to consider who is listening. Sometimes, and this tends to happen with me, but I have improved significantly, is that if you're in a meeting, take for example a Zoom meeting like this one, and people are asking, someone is asking a question, there's a tendency to want to speak up when you're given the opportunity and respond to the person who is asking the question without consideration for who else is in the audience, who else is listening. And the implications are sometimes huge, because sometimes while you're being straight and honest with the person that you're addressing, if you're not factoring in who else is in the room, who else is listening, you may say certain things in a way that paint you in a wrong light. So who is listening is a very important part. And then who is it about, or what is it about? So, but because it's a who part, we deal with who is it about. Who are the characters in this matter that we're discussing? What's their relevance? How do they affect the bottom line? All right. So these are very important questions to consider in the 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 15 seconds before you begin to respond. All right. There are several others, but we don't have the time to go into them in this taster class. So we will move on. There's the what questions, the why questions, what impression you want to leave. Okay, we'll move on because we only have 5 minutes left. And so we'll talk about strategies and the how questions. These are very, very important questions to consider, okay? And then we have several frameworks and we have a lot of material that will be very useful to anyone who joins this program. So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to explain that this is something that you need to consider attending. I am a public speaker and a public speaking coach. And I started doing this because I saw a gap that a lot of professionals have. One of the things that I do is I started an organization called the African Young Speakers Forum, and it's supposed to help young people. It's set up to help young people to gain confidence in delivering their information. Because what is the worst thing that can happen? Is one of the worst things that can happen when you're knowledgeable is that you know, but you hold back and nobody knows that you know. And nobody knows that you can help. And nobody knows that you have value to offer. And therefore, nobody is reaching out to you. And you come across as a nobody. All right. So this is a very important program also for young people as well as for older people. So in this particular one, I'm facing people who are in their careers They are seeking to advance in their jobs. They're seeking to make a difference in their organizations. They're seeking to become more and more relevant because they have something to offer, right? This is not just about getting a promotion for the sake of a promotion. It's about making a difference. So we want to help you to be able to portray yourself as who you really are, a person of value, a person who can make impact. If that sounds like something you want to do, I encourage you to click the link below this video. I'm going to post the link. So please, if you don't see it just yet, please wait for it, but it will be there soon, all right? And I really, really encourage you to be part of the Ready for Anything Speaking Challenge. We start next week, so don't hesitate. I look forward to seeing you. And I want to thank you so much for listening, and thank you for your time and for being here. Those of you joining in on YouTube, those of you on the Zoom link, thank you so much. I appreciate you all. And at this point, because this is a taster, we're not engaging, I'm just going to say goodbye and see you in class. Bye for now.